just hit record. So Jennifer, it's up to you to introduce.
Okay, everyone, I would like to introduce Quentin Gunn. He's the CEO of Social Media Solutions for Doctors, which was created out of the need to help physicians to safely integrate social, chat, text, and mobile website design into their medical marketing plan and communication process with patients. More and more doctors transition their practice to a fee-for-service model with a focus on Wellcare. Having and using social media as an effective communication and outreach tool. Can you guys tell I'm reading this?
Couldn't tell at all.
I'm usually a really pretty good person here. But anyway, having and using social media as an effective communication and outreach tool will undoubtedly drive up the number of new patient visitors, as well as patient recommendations with testimonials about the office for cash-based prospects to see. Quentin's topic today relates to staff instability and what's it costing your practice. Quentin, take it away.
All right, thank you, Jennifer, so much. I apologize for the lengthy introduction there. The realities are we're entering into the World Wide Web with so many forms of communication. And so the company, as she said, was basically created for the purpose of helping practices do that in a legal way, in the proper way, without giving any violations in the process. Today's topic relates to staff instability and what it's really costing your practice. It's clear to me after working with practice groups for, I'd say, the better part of 15 years, that the growth and profitability of a practice can never be achieved or maintained if there is staff instability in the workplace or the workforce. This is proven to be especially true when it comes to a fee-for-service medical practice group, but more than anything in a functional practice where each individual is responsible for specific functions. When you lose that individual, it can disrupt the ebb and flow of the practice, and it can reduce the quality of patient care. What I always tell the doctors when I work with them, to be the best, you have to have the best staff. Too often I hear many doctors say frequently, no one's irreplaceable, everyone can be replaced, and that they can find people who are quality replacements in the job market. It's my opinion, and what the evidence has proven is that nothing could be more further away from the truth than that statement. The fact is that it's neither simple nor is it easy to find or build a really good staff in the medical community. As a point of fact, it costs tremendous amounts of money to replace experienced, qualified, and well-trained staff members, not to mention the brain trust that goes along with their experience. So that is part of the problem. But in addition to the material that you're providing, think about the amount of time and effort that your existing practice manager, ancillary staff, and other members spend training this new person, showing them all your processes, showing them procedures, showing them protocols, computer systems, as well as IT software and the like. Add into that, when you bring on a new person, you start to calculate the HR side of it. What are the resources there, the stationery, and then your own intellectual investment for just one new hire. The loss of your staff can happen for many reasons, but we created a basic checklist that kind of demonstrate what are the core reasons people leave a medical practice. And they're pretty consistent. You may rank them differently according to what you may have seen individually, but from our side, there's some consistent patterns. Low wages, childcare issues, lack of clear job descriptions, micromanagement, meaning checking up on the checkup, lack of employee reviews. There's often unrealistic expectations of the new staff or of the staff. Something as simple as failure to say thank you or job well done. It can be a discriminatory work environment, meaning sexual harassment, ethnic harassment, treating people differently or disparately due to race or some other religious reason. Oftentimes, if not managed properly, personality conflicts can be a reason. People get frustrated today because we live in a automated society, so outdated equipment or process and procedures that are too long and unnecessary or redundant can create a reason for people to leave. And the last two, which are probably the most serious, are rude or ill-mannered, ill-tempered doctor or practice manager. Nothing can be more discouraging to a staff than being treated disrespectfully or in a rude way. And then the last one is failure to have work versus home life boundaries. What are the boundaries? When I clock out, it should not be that I'm still on the clock receiving phone calls or text messages or email from the doctor. If I'm paid for that amount of time, that's when the communication stops. Otherwise, you're opening up Pandora's box. Whatever the reason, when a tenured staff person departs, that person leaves and takes with them all of your teachings, all of your new techniques, and training that you just enhanced for someone else to take. So this person leaves you with all your knowledge, goes to a new practice. And guess what? In most cases, they're your competitor. So in today's environment, what we're finding in the customer area is prospects and customers are much more informed, and as a result, they expect a higher quality of care and professionalism. You can't create that experience if you're constantly presenting to them new staff. In our opinion, no doctor or practice manager wants to be held hostage by their staff, and I think that's a reasonable feeling. However, our point here is that some team members are indispensable. It is also true that when your patients begin to notice high turnover of staff, they actually feel less secure and confident about their doctor or the patient care process. Patients look for and they need the security that comes from seeing people that they know, that they have an established relationship with. Additionally, from our opinion, it's part of the continuity of patient care. A familiar face ensures that there's a consistent patient experience at your practice. They want to know what to expect and who to expect it from. And this is extremely important in a fee-for-service practice, to be honest. No one is going to pay their hard-earned dollars to wait to be seen. And no one wants to be in an environment where there's inconsistency in the staff, because 9 times out of 10, new people tend to make mistakes. And that can be problematic just on its own. What you set up in terms of dealing with your staff can often determine how people perceive your practice. Just think about this. How would you feel if you saw new faces every time you visit a business establishment? that constant lack of familiarity breeds instability and can be very unsettling and detrimental. Again, your patients need to know who they're dealing with on a regular basis. They need a friendly face who has access to their very personal information and their medical records. Seeing familiar faces builds trust, it builds confidence, it builds reassurance about the kind of care that patients can expect and what they'll receive at your practice. So we've identified why people leave. We've talked about the impact it has on your patient population. Now the next question becomes, or the most important part, how do you attract and keep the best staff? Well, some of these are very simple, and you'll probably put them in the order that applies to your company or your practice. But number one, how do you attract and keep great staff? Offer a competitive wage and the benefits package. Listen, just because you can pay someone less doesn't mean you have to. But the environment today doesn't require that you exceed what the averages are for that position. However, if you want people that are exceptional, then you have to pay for that talent. But you can expect more of them because of that higher wage. You want to create a positive and encouraging work environment. No one is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. And there will be time, even with tenured people, that they'll forget a process or a step or a procedure or some way of handling things that are normal to the process. With new employees, their frequency of errors will start out high, but gradually they will go down, and you want to give them recognition for that. The other thing you want to do is encourage friendly competition. How would you do that? Well, how many positive reviews can your staff generate in a given month? Be sure to have someone make available to customers when they leave your practice what their experience was. Let them know this is part of our taking an assessment of our practice and improving your quality of care. And to me, making sure that surveys are available to your patients and those new patients that come to your office is very important. It's the way you keep the pulse of what's happening in your practice. Plus, these reviews can be shared online, which will then drive up more new patients. The other thing I will tell you is there's an urgent need to promote continuing education and self-development. If someone has been with you for 10 years and you have not sent them or seen them do anything to improve or enhance their own personal skill related to the area of work that they participate in, the realities are they may have checked out on you. If you make an offer for them to go to a course because of their good behavior or their good work ethic, and you want to help them improve so that they can perform other tasks within the practice, offer them opportunities to do self-development. And make sure everyone is up on their continuing ed if there are licenses involved or any degrees involved. One of the things I will tell every practice manager and every doctor, absolutely avoid micromanagement of your staff. It's a time waster. It stresses your staff out. It creates a feeling of fear. It creates a hostile work environment, and it reduces the energy in terms of the friendliness that you want your office to present to new patients or new customers. The other thing that I would advise both doctors and practice managers is avoid overutilization of your salaried employees. When you start getting into excessive hours over 50, where they are on salary, so those hours at times are not viewed as payable because of their salary situation. Remember, those people have lives outside of work. They often have children or husbands who look forward to seeing them. And the truth is, if the day is not organized or managed within a practice, and it's constantly causing people to work overtime, then you either need to hire more staff for growth, or you need to do a better job in managing your practice. Because 50 hours a week is quite a few hours when people have other responsibilities in their lives. The other thing I would say is you want to provide consistent and positive feedback about people's performance. You cannot complain about someone's performance if you fail to identify where they're not doing well. Once you identify what the problems are and you actually see them make improvement, then the goal is to provide them with positive feedback and be consistent about it. One of the last things we hear in terms of ways to get and keep a quality staff is you have to be open to input, ideas, criticisms, concerns about process and procedure. If you're not open to those things, what happens is your staff is closest to the work. And if the doctor and the practice manager are moving around and not listening to the staff, there may be some urgent matter that develops that you actually could have avoided had you listened to them. So getting your staff's input does not mean that you want to have a session of complaints. What you're interested in is conversation that will lead to improved function and process and procedure, and to improve the flow, the patient experience. That's what you're looking for when it comes to input. The thing I say is that doctors and practice managers must recognize that just as they compete for new patients, you must also be prepared to compete for the best staff or personnel. Google, Apple, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of those guys compete with one another for the best staff. And all the more so for the more competitive practices. If you have a concierge practice, anti-aging, dermatologist, cosmetic dentistry or general dentistry, plastic surgery, family practice, primary care physician, all of those doctors have to compete if they want the best staff. If you want to look the best, to be the best without a lot of stress, then you have to compete for the most qualified candidates, because the stronger the candidate, the easier they will be to teach, the faster you'll be able to integrate them into your practice routine and processes, and the better the patient flow and traffic, because of their improved performance, will be in your practice. The other thing I will say is that it is both the job of the doctor and the practice manager to actively find, recruit, hire, train, and retain the best practice staff for an improved patient experience and to help grow the practice profitability consistently. The thing that I tell the doctors as well as practice managers is this: in order to get what you want, you have to help other people get what they want. So what about wage increase requests, given that this is one of the highest reasons for turnover? in my opinion, it's very important to note that wage increase discussions are not the time for a performance review or an appraisal. I repeat, it is not, it's important to know that when a person asks you for a wage increase or that discussion comes up, it is not the time to start the performance review or appraisal process. Any such discussions or issues should have already occurred long before then. And ideally, your discussion is based upon percentage of increase if a prior review was positive. So if you're going to be talking to someone and you've already had the discussion, the next conversation is very simple. How much are we going to give you as a result of your performance? And that is a reasonable basis for wage increases. What we believe at Social Media Solutions for Doctors is that each job within your practice should already have a wage increase guideline. And that guideline should be based on position, on annual revenue growth for that position if they're responsible for revenue, or it should be based on their performance relative to the job description that they were given. Wage increases should always be based upon the financial health of your practice and how individual employees contributed directly or indirectly to that profitability. The longer the tenure, the better work performance should be. This in turn improves workflow, speed of delivery, quality of patient care, and it will also ensure that the environment within the practice is good. Now, there are other factors related to staff and how to incentivize them or how to encourage them to create revenue opportunities within the practice if their position allows for that. One of the ways to measure is product upsells. So within a primary care practice or family care practice, if there are supplemental services or products that can be offered, and it is within the person's job description to offer those services, within the month, how many times have they made that available to patients before they check out, in the course of a consult, etc., if it applies? The greater the number of upsells, the greater the incentive for the staff, the greater the impact is to dealing with patients and making sure they get everything that's available to them. Now, when a staff member requests a raise in wages, what are the factors that must be reviewed and taken into consideration? So I'm just going to recap what the process should be. First of all, how long has the staff member been with your practice? Number two, performance. How have they performed in accordance with their job description? Number three, how many days absent from work or tardy they've been beyond just 10 minutes? And most important, how vital is that staff member or the service they provide to the practice? Because those are critical questions to ask. Now, when you get down to cost, what is the cost to find, hire, and train someone new? When you have the discussion about a person's performance, what they've been doing now that they're hired, you should have all the necessary information and facts at your disposal. But their performance relative to what you hired them for is what dictates the kind of raise that they should be provided. But that wage amount should already be identified for that position. But here are some necessary information and facts that are at your disposal that will help you in the job review process of considering giving someone a raise. Again, job description, their attendance record, what is the feasibility of providing that raise in light of the practice profitability, how do they get along with others, how much patient interaction do they have on a daily basis, and what do patients say about them. So these are some basic things that would need to be given consideration to, and they are key to ensuring that you keep a quality staff. No one should be with you for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years and never get a raise, because that either says something about their performance, or it says something about your management that they're not growing, or it says something about them, that they're your staff, that they're just there to collect a check. And in that case, you may want to encourage them to find something else to do. Now, what is the process of providing an employee review? When you hire someone new, there's the initial review after 30 days. That review would be the employee going through the orientation, going through their job description, understanding their benefits package, knowing their work schedule, meeting their peers, making sure they're up to speed with process and procedure, as well as if they are a good fit for their new role in the practice. And your observation of them throughout this process is critical. In fact, it's urgent. Because in that 30 days, if they haven't quite gotten it, or if you don't really see them excelling, then you want to put into place at that 30-day mark an action plan to help them, so that at the next review of the new hire, which is 90 days then, here's what you're looking for. The 90-day review gives them 60 days from the 30-day review period an opportunity to improve and to know their job. So in 90 days, if it's clear that they're just not going to make it, then that's the time to have a discussion about their abilities for the job and what the next steps will be as a result of their not being able to perform the job to the level that the job description requires. This can also be a time to see if the staff member has met or exceeded their job description. If they are exceeding the job description, then the main thing is to ensure they've got everything down pat. And to be point of fact, if you have an annualized amount dedicated to that position you've hired for, if that amount is a firm amount, then you would not be outside of order to provide them a 10 or 15% in per hour if they demonstrate that they will exceed their job description. But remember, that amount you give them is coming out of what you would have given them for the whole year. So you're not having to keep increasing the amount. Now, at the end of, if you feel like at the end of the 90 days, maybe this person does need a little more time because the job is so technically detailed or requires a little more time on the job, then it's in order that you would come back to them after 6 months, right? Now, that 6-month review is designed to say, okay, you're a nice person. We've given you at least 6 months to prove it, but understand if you don't release them within that 90-day window, and it turns out that they really weren't for the job, but you allowed them to go to that 6 months, you now are going to have a challenge in figuring out how to release that person, okay? What I would tell you, however, is that if you document all the interaction that you've had with them, the 30-day review, the 90-day review, now you're at 6 months and they still haven't demonstrated competence in this regard, then you're able to act to help them find something else. Now, if a person is been with you for a long time, they come off of the need to have that initial review process, and so now you're going to the annual review. Now, the annual review, to me, is a great time for you to say, thank you for a job well done. And if you haven't given them an increase, give the remainder of the scheduled wage increase for the year. It's a part of a reward you give to them for doing a great job. It's a way of saying thank you. It's a way of indicating that you value their time, you value their commitment to their job, you value that they show up, and that they provided you as well as the patient population a overall good experience, that there's no there's no complaints from the rest of the staff about their interaction. These are all important parts of developing your staff and creating a place where people want to work. But what I again will say to practice managers and doctors alike, you cannot complain about a staff member's performance if in fact you have not given a proper job description, if you have not confirmed that they actually understand and know their job, their process, the procedure, that they know and have a that they're not creating problems with their co-workers. It's the practice manager and the doctor's responsibility to know their people. And the other thing I will say is, as it relates to micromanagement, if you have to micromanage the person you hired, more times than not, you shouldn't have hired them. Nothing wrong with using an incremental schedule to spot check people's performance. That is a fantastic option, but if you constantly have to tell people what to do, or you're constantly critiquing people's performance every single day, you're creating anxiety, you're creating a hostile work environment, and you're creating a atmosphere where people don't feel like you trust them. If you hire them, obviously you think they can do the job, and until they demonstrate otherwise, let them do their job once you know they have an understanding of what that job is. So I'm going to conclude my part by saying, on the surface, it may seem that your staff is replaceable. But from what we've just covered, the truth is it takes time, it takes money, and it takes effort to replace knowledge, to replace experience that a tenured staff member will bring. The other thing is that if you are constantly replacing your staff, It is going to slow down your future growth plans. It will create an environment where people feel overworked because either there's not enough people or the person you hired is not carrying their load. So the key here is to make sure the people you're hiring are qualified candidates. When you hire them the first year, it's not unreasonable to do a 30-day review, a 90-day review, if warranted, a 6-month review, and then an annual review. And that is only in the first year. Once they're past the first year, then you just do an annual review because that is appropriate. But again, I say, it is urgent and very important that you treat your staff the way you want to be treated. You spend more than, on average, we all spend in a medical practice working with our doctors and our peers 40 hours a week, and sometimes more. So if you're going to spend that much time in one place, try to create an environment where people want to come there. Don't make it a drudgery. And yes, problems do occur. Systems fail. Process and procedures have to be realigned. But in the end, if you hire properly, if you take care of your tenured staff through proper raises and praise and encouragement, you will find that you have not only an exceptional practice, but 9 times out of 10, you'll have a profitable practice. And that being said, that will conclude my part. I thank everyone for listening in. If you'd like a copy of the outline for what I discussed here, please contact Jennifer as she will make that available to you. You can also find this same article on my LinkedIn page under Quentin Gunn Sr. But as a general rule, we want to make sure that to have the best staff and to keep the best staff, you have to treat people like you would want to be treated. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Quentin. That was awesome.
Excellent. Thank you.
One thing that I do want to ask, because I don't see any questions, but one thing that I did want to make a comment on for everyone is that, because I don't know if you mentioned this, but I didn't hear it, that some states are an at-will state and you don't really have, I mean, documentation is key. That's the thing. But you don't have to have that documentation in order to fire somebody. However, it does help you if they end up going, you know, to collect the unemployment.
That is correct. But I think mainly what I try to emphasize with people is just document. People's mindset today, especially when you're dealing with an employee who is unhappy or wants to, even if it's not justified, if they want to try to sue you, if you have documentation of their poor performance and you also show in that document that you've tried to help them, they've got no case. It will not even make the light of day unless they try to prove sexual harassment in some way.
That makes sense.
Absolutely.
I understand that in some states it's even illegal to shoot employees. But
Funny. Okay, if there are no more questions, then that's going to conclude our conference today. I appreciate everybody coming in and on the conference.